Dutch housing and neighbors, what temporary residents should know. 5 key topics. If you want to get realistic insider insights about housing and neighbors in the Netherlands, this is your chance. Listen to the whole podcast. We'll catch you up in about 10 minutes or so, where you'd otherwise spend hours, if not days, on research. The 5 key topics covered. 1. Housing. The Dutch housing market, especially in cities like Amsterdam, Utrecht and The Hague, is competitive and expensive. 2. Living in Dutch neighborhoods. The Dutch appreciate privacy and quiet. Be polite, greet neighbors, but do not expect instant friendship. 3. Dealing with neighbors. Don't expect excessive small talk. Over time, a relaxed relationship with neighbors may develop, with mutual help. 4. Housing etiquette. Open curtains are common, but don't peek inside. Separating trash is important. 5. Neighborhood dynamics. Neighborhood prevention. Groups contribute to safety and cleanliness. In this podcast, the hosts discuss these topics so you can better understand the Dutch and enjoy your time in the Netherlands more. So let's get started.
All right, so picture this. You land in the Netherlands, ready for an amazing 6 months. Maybe you've got visions of canal houses dancing in your head. But first things first, you've got to find a place to live. And from what I'm seeing in these sources, it sounds like the Dutch housing market can be a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly, especially in the bigger cities like Amsterdam. Think like trying to find a last-minute ticket to a sold-out concert. It's competitive, to say the least.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good analogy. So no leisurely browsing on Craigslist then?
Not quite. In the Netherlands, it's all about these online platforms. You've got Pararius, Funda, CameraNet. They're the heavy hitters.
Each one kind of its own, specialized tool, huh?
Precisely. Pararius, they've got a really wide selection. Funda, they do rentals and properties for sale. And CameraNet, that's your go-to for rooms in shared houses.
So if you're thinking, hey, maybe I'll try out that camera life I've heard so much about, you head straight to CameraNet.
Exactly. A lot of people, even Dutch people, do the whole camera thing at some point. It's budget-friendly, and let's be real, it's a great way to meet people, especially if you're new in town.
Right. Like built-in social life. Sign me up. Okay, so say I found a place, I'm ready to sign on the dotted line. What's the deal with rental contracts in the Netherlands? Anything I should be prepared for?
Okay, so rental contracts here, they're very specific. Tenant rights, responsibilities, it's all laid out, very detailed. You'll definitely want to brush up on your Dutch legal jargon or, find a friend who can help decipher it all.
So maybe not something to skim over with a stroopwafel in hand, huh?
Probably not the best idea. But don't worry, you can definitely find short-term contracts, 6 months, a year, those are out there, especially for expats.
Phew, that's good to hear. 6 months is our jam here. Okay, so contracts, check. What about deposits? Any insider tips on navigating those?
Be prepared to put down a deposit. Usually it's 1 or 2 months' rent, and I cannot emphasize this enough, Reed. The contract.
Every single word. Got it.
Seriously, every single detail.
Okay, fine print, duly noted, message received. So, beyond just the initial rent and deposit, what other expenses are we looking at here?
Right, so on top of the rent, you've got your utilities, of course.
Utilities, gotcha. And just so we're clear, we're talking like gas, electricity, water, internet, the whole shebang.
Exactly, and unlike some places where those might be bundled into the rent, here it's usually on the tenant.
Okay, so that's something to factor in, like usage and all that, right? Could fluctuate month to month.
Absolutely. And then you've got municipal taxes.
Municipal taxes, right. What do those usually cover?
Things like garbage collection, sewage, that kind of stuff. Usually it's split between the tenant and landlord. How that's divided should be in your contract.
That contract again, man, it's like the gift that keeps on giving.
You got it. And one more thing, service costs.
Service costs, okay. What falls under that umbrella?
Basically, it's for maintaining shared spaces, especially in apartment buildings. So cleaning, gardening, elevator maintenance, all that jazz.
Wow, so many moving parts. Is there any chance these costs are sometimes included in the rent, or am I getting ahead of myself?
You always want to double check the contract. Some landlords might include certain things, but it's not super common. Better to be pleasantly surprised than, caught off guard.
Right, transparency is key. Okay, so I was digging through all this info and came across this term, huurtoeslag, which I gather translates to rent allowance.
Exactly. It's basically financial aid from the government to help people afford housing.
And that applies to, anyone living in the Netherlands. Dutch citizens, expats, everyone.
That's the idea, yeah. Though Eligibility depends on a bunch of things: your age, income, nationality, even the type of rental contract you have, and how much your rent is.
Huh, interesting. So even for someone like me, only there for 6 months, it's still worth looking into.
Absolutely. It's more common for long-term residents to get herdoslag, but hey, you never know. Gather your info, see if you tick those boxes.
This is why we deep dive people. You never know what kind of golden nuggets you'll find. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We've talked logistics, but what about the social side of things? I mean, I've heard the Dutch, they value their privacy, right? Especially in neighborhoods, like live and let live kind of vibe.
You're definitely picking up what they're putting down. Dutch people, they're not unfriendly, but they are more reserved, especially compared to some other cultures. So, yeah, don't expect to be like instantly best friends with your neighbors.
No need to go full-on welcome wagon then. No pressure to whip up a batch of stroopwafel cookies.
Hey, if you're feeling ambitious, go for it. But don't be offended if the response isn't, super enthusiastic right off the bat. A friendly go to Morgan or go to middag when you see them, that goes a long way.
Small gestures, big impact.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, what about noise? I've heard the Dutch are serious about their quiet hours.
Let's just say respecting noise levels, especially in shared buildings, it's not just polite, it's the law.
Okay, so no late-night dance parties then?
Yeah.
Or like impromptu karaoke sessions?
Probably best to give your neighbors a heads up if you're planning anything like that. Quiet hours are generally from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Right. Noise complaints, never a fun time no matter where you are. Okay, what about those shared spaces in apartment buildings? Anything I should know to avoid any awkward encounters or dirty looks?
Cleanliness is huge here. So when it comes to hallways, stairwells, all that, just be mindful. Leave it as you found it.
Gotcha. So no leaving my bike parked wherever or propping the main door open for convenience.
Probably not the best move. Those shared spaces are everyone's responsibility.
So I'm all about that Gute Morgen life now. But is that kind of it, socially speaking, or can I actually, get to know my neighbors a bit?
Oh, you can definitely build relationships with your neighbors. It just might take a little time and maybe a slightly different approach than what you're used to.
Okay, so patience is key. Got it.
Yeah.
But how do I, walk that line between being friendly but also not being too, too much?
Honestly, just be yourself, but, maybe dial it down a notch or two. Start with the Gute Morgen, a friendly nod. Those small gestures go a long way. Over time, you might find those opportunities to chat, about the weather, what's happening locally. Just keep it light.
So no need to launch into my whole life story right off the bat.
Probably not the best opening act. Remember, Dutch people, they tend to be private, so let those deeper conversations happen naturally.
Makes sense. Slow and steady wins the neighbor, right? Speaking of Dutch culture, I've got to ask about those open windows. What's the deal with that? Is it a privacy thing, a fresh air thing, or what?
It's a bit of both, actually. It's about letting in light, connecting with the outdoors, kind of a cultural thing.
I like it, but I gotta imagine there's a difference between appreciating the sunshine and full-on staring into someone's living room.
Right, so a quick glance as you're walking by, totally fine. But yeah, no lingering, no curing. That's definitely not cool.
Noted. I will keep my eyes on the sidewalk. Speaking of things that are important to the Dutch, let's talk recycling. Is it really a national pastime?
It's practically an art form. Seriously, they're next level when it comes to recycling.
Okay, so no more chucking everything in one bin and hoping for the best, huh?
Not unless you want to be the talk of the neighborhood, and not in a good way. You'll probably have different bins for paper, plastic, glass, organic waste, the works. And don't even get me started on batteries and electronics. That's a whole other deep dive.
Intense, but I kind of respect it. Okay, one last thing, because it keeps popping up in these sources. What's the deal with Bert Preventi? Sounds intriguing.
Bert Preventi, yeah, it's basically Neighborhood Watch, but with a very Dutch twist.
A Dutch twist. How so?
It's about more than just, reporting crime. It's about residents being proactive, looking out for each other, taking pride in their neighborhood.
So community cleanups, helping out elderly neighbors, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Creating a safe, welcoming environment. It's all connected.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so we've covered everything from contracts and herdoslag to open windows and Bert Preventi. I'd say our listener is officially ready to tackle the Dutch housing market and maybe even make a few friends along the way, right?
I'd say so. Just remember, finding a place to live, it's not just about the four walls. It's about experiencing Dutch culture firsthand. Embrace it, and you'll have an amazing time.
Couldn't have said better myself. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time.